Afternoon. It's the 12th of January 2017. This is going to be volume 3 of my Army career covering the Army Reserves. Now, if you don't already know, there's 3 branches of the Army. You got the regular Army, the Reserves, and the National Guard. There's a little bit of a difference between the National Guard and the Reserves. The National Guard is controlled by the states, and of course the Reserves is under the federal umbrella. For me, I was in the Army Reserves for about 2.5 years, roughly, from the April of '04 to February of '06. And of course, for an Army Reserve soldier, there's really 2 different kind of Army Reserve soldiers. There's those who, it was like myself at the time, who had just come straight from the basic AIT ranks into the reserves, never been active duty, other than the training environment. And then you have those who had come from active duty, who was going to finish out some time in the Army Reserves. Now, everything still adds upon itself. If you've done, say, 10 years or 15 years active duty, you go into the reserves, you do all of your reserve drills during the year, and you get what they call a good year, okay? If you miss a drill weekend, you can make it up during the week, sometime during the year. It's not going to hurt you, but you want to make sure that I think you don't miss more than like 2 drill weekends out of a whole year, so you have a good year. So you literally could do nine drill weekends and not get counted for anything as far as retirement is concerned. So that's kind of some of the formalities about how that works. I missed 1 drill, but I made it up during the week. But I was helping coach in high school football. We had to play a game on a Saturday, and it was going to be out of town over towards Pensacola. So I knew I could make it up during the week, so I didn't go to the drill. Then I'd call the reserve center and make it up. But for those of you who are in the reserves, it's imperative that you get a civilian job. I struggled trying to find a job. On and off, I'd get some sort of part-time work, or I did have 1 full-time job working for a pest control company for a while. That didn't really work out. I think in like 1 week, I worked almost 70 hours. It just was killing me, and then there was a conflict during my probation with me and the boss. But you have to find a civilian job. I was ignorant enough that whenever I went into the reserves, I was thinking that, it's just time of war. It'd be the patriotic duty for some company to give a reserve soldier a job. And of course, they looked at it from the bottom line aspect of, why am I going to give you a job when you could literally be called up within a couple of weeks and then you're gone? So, looking back at it now, almost 40, I can definitely understand their point of view. We did have a couple of opportunities within the Reserve Center to volunteer for deployment. So roughly within the first 6 months, there come word that they were going to, put together a detail, and they were going to, fold into another reserve company under the same 81st umbrella that was out of Tampa, and go to Afghanistan. Well, the company that I was assigned to, or in inside that battalion, they had just come back from Iraq. And so I volunteered for that deployment, but by the time my name came up for recommendation, they had already picked their team. So I missed that on that. Then there was another deployment, and I volunteered for it, and kind of the same thing had taken place before my name ever came up. It was the slots had already been filled. Now there was 2 good details that I was on during the reserves. One was a flag detail for the redeployment of the company from Iraq. And so we did this train up, and I forget the exact location excuse me, I forget the exact location where the ceremony took place. It might have been at Florida State University. It might have been somewhere else, but it was a very nice facility there in Tallahassee, very professional. And I don't remember exactly how, but I ended up being the NCOIC, if you will, which is just non-commissioned officer in charge of this flag detail. Now here's the funny part. I was a PFC, and there was 4 of us that was in the detail, and all the other 3 were NCOs. So here you have this PFC in charge of 3 NCOs. 2 of those NCOs had started their military career in active duty. I found it very, very strange that I would be the one picked, and I don't even remember exactly how or why, but I was selected for the detail. And I was ignorant and dumb enough to not let it bother me. And so we practiced for a couple hours and so on and so forth. And then we end up, doing the ceremony. And it was very simple. You just marched up, did a couple of facing movements, had the presentation of colors, national anthem, all this kind of stuff. And then we marched off. It was very, very simple. Then the second, before I get to the second detail, there was a brigadier general, 1-star general, who was there, and I think he came from Tampa, I think. But anyway, he presented me with a coin, and I've got the coin here. I got this little case here that I keep medals and different coins. Like here's my ring from basic training. There's a piece of the Berlin Wall and everything, and a bunch of coins from around the country, around the world. Different coins. But here's the coin here. So this brigadier general presented me with a coin, and I've been in the Army not even a year, and I've already been coined by a brigadier general. So I was off on a good foot. So the second detail was, and it was an honor to do the second detail. There was a local family in Tallahassee whose grandfather, I think it was a Navy seaman, and he was lost at sea in an attack. I believe it was the Battle of Midway. And they had never recovered his body. And, of course, the daughter, who was born while he was at sea, he had never officially laid eyes on her. She ended up becoming either the president or some high-ranking official within the NRA. So she was a pretty notable person. And I personally didn't know who she was, but she was very successful. And so there was me, 5 other lower enlisted soldiers, and then Sergeant Dawson. Sergeant Dawson was the NCOIC of the flag detail for the Honor Guard. I'd never done Honor Guard. I think I'd folded a flag once in like JROTC in high school. But really and truly, other than saluting the flag, had never really done anything with the flag. So we practiced at this local park in Tallahassee. There's Lake Ella. And so we practiced there on a Saturday. The service was the next day on a Sunday at this local Baptist church in Tallahassee. So we do the practice, and there was the 6 of us holding the flag, and I was kind of in the center, and it seemed pretty simple enough in how you fold the flag and so on and so forth. Well, the next day, we arrive, and we've already got 2 of the soldiers are down. I think one ended up getting sick. and I had to go to the emergency room or something. The other one, to this day, I still don't know why he didn't show up. Well, anyway, long story short, it just so happened that as we were going to be folding the flag, it was going to be I who was going to do the overwhelming majority of the folds. Well, I'm scared to death. Okay? I'm thinking, okay, this family has waited 60-something years to do this, ceremony, to have this official military funeral with honors, and I'm going to screw it up. So we kind of walked through it a couple of times before, it's like early in the morning, like 8 o'clock in the morning, maybe 9 o'clock. And the music minister of the church he kind of walked through us as well, because he was going to, for most people, and I didn't even know this at the time, there's 13 different meanings for each fold. Okay, and some of them go back to more of a patriotic, early colonial time period, and then the others are based on biblical scripture out of the King James Bible, and I didn't know that at the time. So what the music minister was going to do before each fold was made, he was going to read off one of those meanings, and he had a cue word. I forget now what it was, but whenever he said that cue word would be whenever I would have to do the fold. So I had enough time in between each fold to kind of think about, okay, I need to fold it a certain way. And it ended up being fine. I didn't mess up on any folds. We were able to make it work, and the mission was complete. Sergeant Dawson, of course, presented the family with the flag and everything, and it was very, very well done. We didn't have to stay for the service, but we did out of courtesy. So those are like the two big things that I kind of did as far as details are concerned. Now, inside the company, I was, trying to make a good impression and what you could consider like a hard charger, if you will. Made sure my boots was always spick and span, uniform was nicely pressed. And this is back in the day when you had BDUs and the black boots you had to shine. And I still got all those BDUs. I still got the boots. Matter of fact, I still put a shine on them just the other week, just because they hadn't had one in about a year. And but anyway, so you had to do this, and so I wanted to make a good impression, and I was selected out of all the new young soldiers to be the new guidon bearer, and that it came with its own sets of responsibilities. It was fun. The first sergeant at the time was an active first sergeant. He was a sergeant first class. I believe his last name was Geiger, I think it was. Had never done active duty time or anything, and you do your reports and so on and so forth. And while we was waiting on the reports, he would always say something funny or whatever, and that was kind of a cool thing, kind of put on your old military resume. But as time went on, I was having trouble trying to find civilian employment. And I was staying in pretty good shape. I was running. I spent a lot of time with the football team. One year I spent like almost 80 hours a week with them. Because I couldn't find work. But, the natural ways of life, kind of catch up with you. And you got to pay bills and so on and so forth. So I was kind of in this rock and a hard place. And I knew I needed to get out. There was no doubt that at some point in my life to move forward, I had to leave Gadsden County for good. So anyway, I started making the decision that it's time for me to go. And so I told my reserve command that I wanted to put in the paperwork to go active duty. They had the opportunity. They could have fully said, no, we're not going to grant it, so on and so forth. They were on board with it. We sent forth the paperwork and went down to Tampa. And then there was several, like 4 or 5 month time period that it was like pulling nails to try to get this paperwork signed. And there was a lot of reasons for that. I don't think it was anything personal towards me. It just kind of got lost in the shuffle. I think we had to send it down there 2 or 3 times. But anyway, finally got signed. And then I had to go back to Jacksonville MEPS, which is where I'd gone to before when I went up to basic training. Of course, my involvement at MEPS at that time was very, very simple. I actually drove myself. It was basically, I just had to meet with, I didn't have to do any medical stuff. I just met with the liaison. My recruiter at the time, Sergeant Perez, who's still a friend today, we had actually become kind of friends. He was a recruiter there in Tallahassee, and he'd come to, his station was really just down the street from the Reserve Center, and he would come down to the Reserve Center and just to be around soldiers, and we do some training like with land navigation. So I kind of built up a little bit of rapport over a year with him. So I was very comfortable with him, and he was in Jacksonville the day, I think he had to do some sort of a train up thing, and he was in Jacksonville the day that I was there, and ended up, just he was able to get me what I wanted, which was Fort Benning. They were wanting to ship me to Korea for the first active duty drill assignment, and I was like, no, I'm going to stay local, because one of my main plans was whenever I got to Fort Benning, I wanted to go to airborne school, and so that was one of my main motivations. But plus, it was still local enough that where if I needed to come home, I could. And then if I could still have some involvement with the local football team at the high school, because I really built up a really good reputation and relationship with the team and several of the kids. Still close with several of the kids. Of course, they're mid-20s now today. But some of my reasons wanting to stay local and everything, but I needed to leave as far as every day and get on with my life. But ended up, getting Fort Benning for my first active duty assignment, and this was the 21st of February, 2006. So on that day, I officially swore into active duty. I had to report to Fort Benning the very next day. Now, this is where the next video will start, and this one will stop. And it's going to be pretty interesting with some pretty funny stories for Fort Benning. So, until then, this is Caleb signing off the net.